Local programming on KRWG made possible in part by viewers like you. Thank you.
So I've been doing a lot of research to be able to get ready for this particular interview. And I have to be honest with all of you, I am in a position where many of you tonight are going to be. And it's pretty much the position of a student. I will be sitting across this table, learning a little bit more about something very big in our community. Now, from what I understand up to this point in my research and just doing a little bit of background information, is that someone in our community who is a student at the University of Texas at El Paso, has been involved in a very, very big breakthrough. Now, it's not often that we hear of big medical, scientific breakthroughs coming out of our community, but we should get ready because according to a conversation I was having with my guest this evening, we're probably going to be getting a little bit more of this. Over the course of the last several months, hours on end, there has been a team at the University of Texas at El Paso doing an investigation that could have some groundbreaking developments when it comes to tuberculosis. As we all know, tuberculosis is something that has been very big. There have been vaccinations developed, but as time goes on, well, those vaccinations sometimes begin to lose some of their potency because you have some sort of resistance from tuberculosis or whatever it is, the strand, that begins to, well, need more research to be able to develop more vaccinations, to be able to cover people in communities like our own. And as we know, tuberculosis is something that's pretty big and in terms of the Latino Hispano community, not only in this community, but throughout the entire United States of America, throughout the world. Joining me this evening, I am very proud to say I have a very good friend, also an alumnus of the National Hispanic Institute, Rebecca Soto, a student at the University of Texas at El Paso. She is known as a phage hunter, and you're known as a phage hunter because from what I've learned, Rebecca, phages are viruses that infect bacteria, and there was a Dr. Hatfull that discovered phages, and that is pretty much the beginning of us being able to look into how to develop, well, new vaccinations and new treatments for diseases like this. And so now there's phage hunters all over colleges and universities. You were one of those, but the big difference between them and you is that you discovered something pretty big. So congratulations and thank you for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
Rebecca, tell me a little bit more about what this all means. You are going to be making a pretty big presentation in Washington, D.C. over a particular phage that can have breakthrough developments when it comes to tuberculosis. You were selected to make this presentation. There's pretty big names involved in this, like the Howard Hughes Medical Institute. You're being flown up to Washington, D.C. Pretty big stuff, but explain it to me and all of us at home in terms of something that we can understand and celebrate with you, really, because this is pretty big.
Well, at the very beginning, we were all a pretty basic overall method, a strategy that we did is that we captured a phage, and then we purified it, and then we characterized it, and then we sequenced and annotated it.
Tell people what a phage is, because I had to really read up on this. So to be honest with you, before this, I did, the social sciences while I was in college. So take us through what a phage is and why it's so important in going out there and capturing. What were you capturing? What is a phage?
Well, a phage is, like you said, it's essentially a virus that infects bacteria. And predominantly, phages have been known to do phage therapy. And so phage therapy is growing countlessly throughout the world, as instead of doing vaccinations, you do phage therapy. And so that's where we were heading towards, that we would hopefully create some kind of, not so much a vaccination, but something that will help, cure someone who has tuberculosis against the new virulent strains of tuberculosis. And so essentially that's what we were doing throughout this whole year.
So you go out into the community, and you said you go through 3 steps. So the first step to try and develop this phage treatment that you're talking about, to deal with tuberculosis, you have to go out and you have to go, I suppose, identify an area where you think you're going to find something. How does that play out? How do you go and collect a sample that will eventually lead to something like this?
Well, it's not some specific area. Actually, it's really just a soil sample, or it can be animal carcass. Obviously, we don't want to go anywhere near animal carcass because we don't want to contract a disease. So we all of us picked a soil sample, and so throughout our first semester of research in the lab, we just pretty much just cultivated that soil sample, and then we infected it into this culture, also known as M. stigmatics.
Okay.
And it's very similar to M. tuberculosis. But we just didn't want to use M. tuberculosis because it's a respiratory disease. So you can contract it just by breathing. And I mean, I don't remember signing a waiver, so we didn't want to do that.
Right.
And so we pretty much do that. And so we infect it into the culture of M. smeg, and then we let it grow. And then from there, we single out a single phage. We just get like a little phage, and then from there we purify it, and then we sequence it.
Now, I think you've shared some pictures with us of how this process develops. Take us through the process. So you go out, you collect, and then you're talking about infecting this particular thing. How do you monitor it? What are you looking for? I mean, you shared with our show and with all of us here this evening certain pictures of I guess, your cultivation process. Take us through that.
Okay, well, as you can see in this picture right here, it looks pretty lice. This is an agar plate, and agar is just a culture media. And so when it's successful in, infecting the bacteria, you can see that there's little circles where it's been completely lysed. And so that's just like, when you hold it up to the light, that's how you can tell. It's just complete circles where it's just clear, that there's no more agar, there's no more culture. And so that's how you know that it's been completely infected.
So when you see this yourself, and you're looking at excitement, I mean, are you on to something? Is that the point where you know you're on to something, or no, not yet?
Well, I mean, it is a point, because you don't want something where it's nothing's lice, because that actually happened to a couple of people in our lab where nothing there, it was still agar, it was still intact, everything was fine. So nothing happened. And in ours, in some cases, our very first plate that we got, it was completely lysed. There was barely anything that you can see that was still intact of the culture media. So, I mean, of course that's exciting to us, because not only do we have one that was successful, but we felt like it superseded our expectations.
So is it a little bit of stroke of luck, or is it the place where you go out and look for this particular sample? How does that, I mean, how are you successful and others not so much?
It is pretty much kind of luck. It depends on where you collected the sample. We wanted to collect ours from the Franklin Mountains, because no soil had ever been collected from that type of environment. So we figured, you know what, we're just going to go for it. We'll pick somewhere that's never been explored, and if it happens, great, and if it doesn't, then we'll pick somewhere else. And it just so happened that it did work for us.
That's kind of interesting how we've never collected soil from the Franklin Mountains when it's the biggest piece of scenery in our community. Okay, so after that part, what happens next? So you get back this picture we were all seeing, and what happens next? I mean, what's the next step in the process?
Well, next, I mean, as you can see in the picture, it's a group of phages. I mean, it's 10 to the 31st, viruses in that bacteria.
So there's
tons
of viruses in this little petri dish that you shared with all of us.
There's tons, and so what we wanted to do is we wanted to purify a single phage.
Okay.
And so what we did was, we got a
like a syringe of some sort, or just kind of extracted it?
Exactly, that's what we did. And so we extracted it, and then we purified it, and it was several processes. It took maybe a couple of weeks for us to purify it, and then from there it became the phage.
It was, and then now you have a concentration of just that phage in the petri dish?
And now we just had, and then so from there on we just grew that single phage.
And we have a picture of that too, right? I mean, which petri dish is it? Because I know you shared, 3 of them with us?
Yes, it's actually the one that looks kind of like snake skin. It's a little darkish.
Okay.
Picture, yeah.
We'll try to, is that one?
Yes, that's it.
I'm kind of learning with you as I go along here. I don't really have much of a background in the sciences other than what I did, it's very basic stuff. And this stuff really interests me. So you get to this point, you're thinking what? You're thinking, okay, I'm onto something. There's a phage that we've purified. What made you choose to purify the phage? At that point, did you know that you were onto something, or?
Well, honestly, it was just the way we did it was that we had the agar plate, and so we wanted to purify a single phage. And so, for the most part, after a series of dilutions, the agar plate didn't become so lysed. There was few cultures now. And so we wanted to pick one that was the lonesome dove, the one that was away from all the other lysed areas of the agar plate.
So it could be pure?
So it could be pure, and so we did that, and it just so happened it came out.
Now, there's a series of reasons why the Howard Hughes Medical Institute and these folks that you're going to go out and present to select individuals. There's a reason why you in this particular case from your team was selected. Take me through all of this, because now you obviously have a phage. You've kind of identified this lonesome dove. You're excited. You're onto something. At what point does the Howard Hughes Medical Institute get involved, and how did you and your team feel about all of that? And obviously the university, a pretty big deal.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, the Howard Hughes has been with us from the very beginning. We've always been, very close to them, and
it's part of the process, I suppose.
Yes, it is. Exactly. But during this whole process, I mean, you have this overreaching goal that everyone wants to be the one to go to Washington, because there's only one person selected.
Yeah.
And so you start off with that overreaching goal, but as you're going through this, you realize this is so exciting that, it really doesn't matter because you discovered your own virus, and so you just get excited about that. And, honestly, to go home and tell your parents, oh, I discovered a virus, it's rewarding on its own.
So you discover a virus. Tell me reactions from people, your own personal reaction. I understand you were doing this as a team, and then at some point you were selected to be the one to make the presentation. But take me through the reactions, your professors, your family. What were they like?
Well, I mean, like my research partner, Bayu, we actually went to high school together.
Okay.
So we know each other very well. We know each other's reactions. We know when we get excited. And so throughout the whole time, that's just how we were, and we knew it. And, with my parents, they've always been supportive. My mom was actually a biology major.
So your mom was onto it.
She had an idea. She had an idea of what we were doing. But, for her, my dad tried to, understand. But, they were both very supportive of me. And, as my brother, too, I got to share in my excitement with them. And that was all rewarding, too.
Now, tell me a little bit about what all of this means. I know that there's a reason why you're going to Washington. There's a lot of excitement around what this could mean, and it's a pretty big deal. So take me through that. Why are people excited? Why are you excited about this? What can this mean for the future in terms of medicine and science?
Well, it really didn't it was exciting the whole time, but it actually got really exciting for me just these past couple months, because that's when we were annotating the genome sequence.
Okay.
And so we had the whole sequence in a computer, and we were annotating it for proteins and enzymes and amino acids.
Tell me tell all of us a little bit more. What is a genome sequence, and why is that important? Because I'm sure, just like me, there's plenty of people wondering.
It's like the DNA of the phage.
Okay.
So, I mean,
you had to go into the DNA of this particular phage, and you had to kind of map it all out.
And we had to annotate it, so see like special proteins that something encoded or amino acids that came out of it. And actually recently, I was looking on the tRNAs, because every phage has a tRNA. And actually it's been pretty prevalent that they all encode tryptophan tRNAs. And no one really knows what the function of a tryptophan tRNA is. I mean, I've looked up abstracts and there's no real known function.
And what is pronounce it again for me?
A tryptophan tRNA?
Yeah. Okay, what is that?
Well, I mean,
nobody knows.
No one knows. No one knows the function of it.
Okay.
And so, I mean, that part's exciting. And so what I did was this past, presentation is that I compared the tryptophan tRNA of MSMEG, which was the culture that we used to grow it in, against Rebecca. And I mean, I figured that it would maybe be the same tRNA, but it wasn't. It was completely mutated. But the phages that were most similar to Rebecca, had slight mutations. But they all mutated the same.
Let's clue in our audience a little bit. Rebecca, it's an interesting name. It's the name of the phage you discovered. It's a
Yes.
combination of your name
Yes.
with the name of, is it your research partner?
Phage.
So Rebecca, which is the phage, the name of the phage that you've discovered, is now compared in its, I guess, mapping that you did of the DNA and its kind of decoding that you did of the DNA to others that you know existed. And what you end up finding is that they're not at all the same. And there's some new interesting things that I guess have never been studied, or there's a possibility that they've never been studied. Is that what you're?
Yes, exactly. Well, there's some that, there was actually just this one phage that was discovered this year also. It was named Twister. And I mean, it was discovered nowhere near El Paso. It was discovered northeast of the United States.
Okay.
And it's so closely related to Rebecca. I mean, we compared the genome sequences, and it's almost an identical match to Rebecca.
And no one has ever found things like this before. This is something groundbreaking, new. Rebecca, how old are you?
18.
You're 18 years old. What grade level are you in at the University of Texas?
Sophomore.
El Paso? You're a sophomore. That's pretty big
Yes.
for just a sophomore. I mean, tell me a little bit about the reactions you've been getting from people in the field, because I'm pretty sure, I mean, have you contacted the people that know Twister, this other phage? I mean, is there a buzz, or is that buzz going to be generated once you go and present up in DC? Because I know there's some things you couldn't even share with me because it hasn't been presented yet. So tell me a little bit about that. Is there a buzz now? Because this is, I don't know, to me, I'm sitting here going, wow.
I mean, there is definitely a buzz. I mean, it's always exciting when someone discovers something new. And so I'm excited to share it in Washington. And I'm excited mostly to meet the person who discovered Twister, because such different geological locations, and yet the phages are almost exactly the same. I mean, the genome sequence and the length and everything is pretty remarkably identical.
And what has come of Twister? Like, do you know the story of Twister, or what kind of studies have been done on it and where it stands in comparison to what you're about to go through with Rebecca?
I mean, I don't really know that much about Twister. It's just discovered this year. Like
So
Rebecca,
both of them about the same, wow.
They were discovered at exactly the same time. And so I'm just excited. They will be at Washington, so I'm looking forward to meeting whoever discovered Twister and having a conversation.
So do you know anything about where the sample that they collected was? Because I mean, you obviously collected your sample in the Franklin Mountains. Was their sample collected in a mountainous area, or is it similar demographics, or do you know anything about those particular details? Because I'm sure that's a curiosity point for you as much as it is for someone like
Well,
me.
I actually looked it up, and it wasn't found in a mountain range. It was actually found in like a canal.
Oh, wow. So interesting stuff. The things that you found here in El Paso, which is a groundbreaking kind of development, and the things that have been identified, this other phage, Twister, represent something big. Explain to me tuberculosis, how it's been dealt with in years past, and the reasons why something like this could lead to breakthroughs in tuberculosis.
Well, tuberculosis is a respiratory disease, so it's very easy to contract just by simple breathing. You can contract tuberculosis, and there has been vaccinations for it, but there's new virulent strains of tuberculosis that have grown resistant to antibiotics and vaccinations. And so it's growing predominantly in regions, especially in Latino areas like El Paso. And so more people are contracting it, and obviously we don't want that. So, phages, it'll help with phage therapy. And so that will hopefully get rid of the new virulent strains and ease the contamination process.
It's big, and I'm kind of left a little speechless, because I'll tell you what, Rebecca, a lot of people talk about celebrities, a lot of people talk about, we even talk on this show about politics, but breakthroughs like this happening in our community, pretty big for someone like you, sophomore at the University of Texas at El Paso, to do something at this level, to be involved with entities like, the Howard Hughes Medical Institute is, I mean, you're a rock star in my book. So that's amazing. I want to congratulate you on that. Let's talk a little bit about your background, because it's not every day that people get interested in science like you do. You obviously have been a very big part of the National Hispanic Institute. You are involved in its programs. You've gotten involved with the organization. And a lot of its alumni end up doing a lot of things in the social sciences, some in an engineering field. Maybe some may go off and become medical doctors. But what you're doing in the sciences, I mean, where did your curiosity for science begin? Tell me the story of Rebecca and her love for science.
Well, I mean, growing up, I've always been interested in science. I was never really a humanities person or a political person. I've never gravitated towards it.
Yeah.
And my dad, he's very good at math. And my mom, being a biology major, I grew up with that.
Yeah.
And so it came very natural to me. And growing up, I've always had friends who were interested in the medical field. I mean, I have several friends who are pre-med majors, and I have several friends going off to medical school this year too. And I mean, pretty much people who I associate with fall under the STEM,
The STEM term.
The STEM term.
Science, technology, engineering,
and
math.
Yes.
Okay.
And so I pretty much associate with those people. So I've always known that kind of environment.
Mm-hmm.
And so for me, it's completely regular, you
Yeah.
know, and then I go off to NHI where people talk politics and, that's just a new thing. And I'm like, oh my gosh, where did this come from? I thought,
Yeah.
And so it was new. So to me, it was always regular to just have a passion for science.
Tell me the single biggest influence in your life, a little bit about who that influence was and why, because I'm sure people are wondering, how do you replicate a Rebecca Soto, like if we're having parents watch this evening? Tell me a little bit about your biggest influence in your life.
I mean, obviously my family is
Yeah.
a huge influence. They've always supported, me and my brother in whatever endeavor we wanted to do. It was never, they critiqued us. It was always like, you do whatever you want to do and we're going to support you. So that's always been a big influence. And my brother too, because we just communicate very well. We have a very amazing relationship to where it's easy to communicate, and I feel very open to him to, talk about this stuff.
Biggest goals? I mean, you're obviously a sophomore
Mm-hmm.
in the community here in El Paso at the University of Texas at El Paso. Doing something this big as a sophomore, obviously bright future ahead. Biggest goals?
I mean, obviously, any scientist's biggest goal would be a Nobel Prize. But, I'm really looking into organic chemistry right now.
Uh-huh.
And I'm really interested in organic pollutants
Okay.
into the air and the impact. And I mean, we all know, especially for the El Paso region of Sarco,
Yeah.
how it's huge impact on the environment and how it affected people. And so that's what I'm looking into right now.
I mean, it takes a pretty big guts, Rebecca, and I love it to hear you say Nobel Prize. I mean, you're pretty much drawing the line and saying, and you know what, I believe it. You may very well get there based on this discovery just alone. You're doing so well. Tell me about where you see yourself in the next couple of years. I mean, obviously, if you have these interests. You're going to have to, you're planning to go continue in schooling, stay in the El Paso area, go away. What are you thinking about in those terms?
I mean, obviously, like education-wise, I still have quite a bit to go. I mean, I want to get a doctorate, so I still have a couple of years in me. But, I love El Paso. I love UTEP, and I've made great connections there already just through this program. And so if, I hope to continue my research at UTEP, and if that means, making connections with several professors, and hopefully continue my research there, then I'd love to stay at UTEP and do my graduate studies there too.
One of the things that people talk a lot about in our community is the whole context of developing and grooming this community to be able to develop breakthroughs that do have to deal with health and wellness within the Latino Hispano community, because this area is quite frankly a capital of the Latino Hispano community. Obviously, tuberculosis is very big within the Latino Hispano community. Where do you see some of these things going? Do you see a lot more? I know that the program you're involved in at UTEP is only 2 years old, but you're already having a breakthrough like this. Do you see a lot more of that coming? I mean, if you could just kind of flesh it out, knowing the people that you're currently working with, your research partners, where do you see things going in terms of the medical field here in the area and science?
I mean, I see great future for this. Very promising. In fact, one of my instructors for the Phage centers, his name is Dr. Yano, and he also has his own lab. It's an HIV research lab, and it's very interesting. And he actually, age is very interesting, and I know a little bit about it, but not so much. And there's a part where the protein, attaches to a T cell, and he actually found a way to block that interaction to where HIV wouldn't replicate.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and that came out of, a UTEP lab. And so he's actually working on a pill currently that would help terminate that interaction.
That's amazing. We're down to my last 2 minutes, and I have two big questions for you. The first one is, I've heard that you're interested in developing perhaps your own research lab in the community. Is that true? And if so, has anybody else ever done anything like this? Because I don't know of anybody who has.
Well, yes, I am interested because, learning about the genome sequence of, phages, it's breathtaking. And so I want to see more in depth of, especially the tRNAs and what their function is, because I don't want to be left with this question of what does it do and be told we don't know the function. And so I love to know, the function. And so I actually talked to several of my professors, and they're on board with me to help me, start up a lab. So I don't know if there ever been anything like that before, but I'm sure people will join on board with me.
No, I'm sure people will definitely join on board with you. Biggest advice for anyone that would like to get involved in the sciences like you have and have a breakthrough like this at the age of 18, what would it be?
Science is just an amazing field. I mean, it's always a question of why is this? And I mean, I support anyone who wants to be in the science field. It's amazing, and science is so broad. There's so many areas of subject, from microbiology to chemistry to physics. There's so much you can just dig into and just be so engulfed with, and you get so much reward and so much benefits from doing it too.
Well, Rebecca, I want to congratulate you, and I want to say best of luck to you in Washington, D.C. You're going to make us all proud. I'm sure of it. Folks, you'll be presenting to the Howard Hughes Medical Institute from our very own community. Pretty big deal. There's a lot of excitement, folks. I hope this conversation captivated your imagination as much as it captivated mine. We'll try to continue to have more of these in future episodes to come. Thank you for joining us this evening. For all of us here at Fronteras, have a good night. I'm Hector H. Lopez.